This is the Sterling-Patchett Mk5, a suppressed version of the famous Sterling submachine gun. With its folding stock, it's compact, and with much of its length taken up with an integrated suppressor, it's deadly quiet as well. Weapons like these were issued to the Buzos Tácticos, the Argentine Navy's assault commandos. They were among the very first Argentine forces to land on the Falkland Islands, just before midnight on the 1st of April 1982. After securing the beaches just south of Stanley, they went inland. Most headed for Moody Brook Barracks, but the British knew they were coming and the site was empty. Meanwhile, a smaller force attacked the governor's residence, Government House. Here, the British held out for a few hours, but the odds were stacked against them. Soon, Argentine Amtraks arrived and the British were surrounded. The only option: surrender. The Royal Marines were taken into custody by Buzos Tácticos like Jacinto Eliseo Batista, seen here, Sterling in hand. This is one of many critical weapons from the Falklands which are held in the archive stores and galleries of IWM, a family of 5 museums and historic sites which tells the human story of conflict from 1914 to the present day. In this video, we'll take an in-depth look at those weapons which shaped the fight for the Falklands, as well as the people who used and faced them. Within days of the Argentine invasion, a British task force set sail to take the Falklands back. This was a surprise to the Argentines. They'd not expected the British to put up a fight. Nonetheless, the odds in the conflict appeared, on paper at least, to be in Argentina's favour. They were fighting in their own backyard, close to their lines of supply, while the British had to sail over 8,000 miles from home, relying on just 2 aircraft carriers for air cover. But wars aren't fought on paper. On the 30th of April, as the British task force approached the islands, the RAF launched a daring attack which helped to balance the odds: Operation Black Buck. The target was the airfield at Stanley, the most important on the islands. To hit it, Britain enlisted 2 types of aircraft, both of which are on display at IWM Duxford: the Vulcan and the Victor. The Avro Vulcan was on the eve of retirement. It had originally been designed as a high-level nuclear bomber, but with its giant delta wing, it was repurposed for low-level conventional bombing. It could also carry a massive payload of 21 1,000-pound bombs. But the target was nearly 4,000 miles away from the closest British base on Ascension Island, and so to hit it, the Vulcan relied on another aircraft, the Handley Page Victor. The Victor was another former nuclear bomber, of which a number had been converted to refuelling tankers. However, the target was also beyond their range, and so a chain of 11 Victors was required in order to get a single Vulcan to the target. On the 30th of April 1982, the first of 7 Black Buck raids began. There were some hairy moments. The primary Vulcan suffered a malfunction, and so the backup, piloted by Martin Withers, had to take over. As he dropped his payload, Argentine anti-aircraft fire arced into the sky, but Withers was already away. Photo reconnaissance later revealed that a single bomb had cratered the runway. This raised fears that airfields in Argentina could be targeted, and the next day, the Argentines moved a number of fighters away from the Falklands to defend the mainland. However, this was far from the only consequential action of the day. Britain had declared a 200-mile total exclusion zone around the Falkland Islands, and on the 1st of May, the British task force crossed into it for the very first time. Their goal was to establish air and sea superiority before putting troops ashore to recapture the islands themselves. At the same time, 3 Argentine naval task forces also converged on the exclusion zone. To the south, the General Belgrano. To the north, a group of corvettes and the Argentine aircraft carrier, the 25 de Mayo. The decisive naval engagement of the Falklands was about to take place. It was the Argentines who were first to move. An S-2E from the 25 spotted the British carriers, and their Skyhawks prepared to launch. Destroying a British carrier could end the conflict here and now. However, an unexpected dead wind prevented the Argentines from taking off. While they waited for the weather to improve, The British seized the initiative with their nuclear submarines. Britain had 3 in the South Atlantic: the Swiftsure-class Spartan and Splendid, and the older Churchill-class Conqueror. They could remain submerged almost indefinitely and carried a range of attack weapons to deal with enemy ships. It was HMS Conqueror who located the General Belgrano on the morning of the 1st of May. But as she was skirting the edge of the exclusion zone just to the south, Conqueror did not attack. It was not until the next day, when the British War Cabinet changed the rules of engagement, that Conqueror launched her strike. She fired 3 Mark 8 torpedoes. 1 missed, but 2 hit their target. 20 minutes later, the Belgrano's captain, Hector Bonzo, ordered his crew to abandon ship. 770 were rescued from the sea, but 321 of Bonzo's crew, plus 2 civilians, were killed, making it the deadliest single event of the entire conflict. In the aftermath, the Argentine Navy returned to port and stayed there. Britain had won the sea battle for the Falklands. Now they had to win the air battle. The aircraft of the British task force were far outnumbered by the Argentines. There were initially just 20 British fighters up against nearly 100 Argentine jets. But the British had an ace up their sleeve: the Sea Harrier. The Sea Harrier is a V-stall jet fighter. It can take off from very short runways or vertically. And this was important because the British aircraft carriers were small, and the Harriers needed to be in the sky at all times to protect the British fleet from Argentine attack. The Harriers were slower than the Argentine Mirages and Daggers, but they were more manoeuvrable, and their pilots, like Sharkey Ward, who flew our Sea Harrier, were more experienced as well. However, most importantly of all, they were equipped with the latest Sidewinder air-to-air missile. Older air-to-air missiles could only be fired from directly behind the enemy, but the AIM-9L worked from anywhere. It was a major advantage. In the initial air-to-air battle on the 1st of May, the Argentinians lost 2 Mirages, a Dagger and a Canberra. After that, they largely tried to avoid the British fighters, instead switching their focus to Britain's surface ships. A few days later, the British got their taste of Argentina's most fearsome weapon, the Exocet missile, a weapon that threatened to change the course of the conflict not once, but twice. The Exocet is a French-built anti-ship missile. Argentina had 5 in our arsenal when the conflict began. Now this is a ship-launched variant, but they could also be launched from aircraft. On the 4th of May, HMS Sheffield was on picket duty in front of the main British task force. She then came under attack by 2 Argentine Super Etendards. They each fired an Exocet, skimming the sea at a speed of nearly 10 miles a minute. The missiles caught Sheffield totally unawares. One struck her on her starboard side, igniting a fire that eventually sank the ship 6 days later. 20 sailors were killed and 26 injured. This attack forced the British task force to move to the eastern edge of the Falklands, reducing the threat from Exocet. This helped to protect the British carriers, but made the job of the Harriers much more difficult. Gaps inevitably emerged in their combat air patrols. On the 21st of May, the British launched their amphibious landing to retake the Falklands. It was now that the air battle peaked in intensity. The ground forces went ashore at San Carlos Water, facing only token resistance, but the escort ships in the Falklands Sound came under fierce Argentine attack. British air defences were limited. Ship-based surface-to-air missiles struggled to hit the low-flying Argentine aircraft, while the land-based Rapier missile system took time to get deployed. This created an opening for Argentine aircraft, one of which was the IA-58 Pucara. Operating from airstrips on the Falklands, these twin-turboprop counter-insurgency aircraft posed a different threat compared to Argentina's fast jets, but they suffered heavily at the hands of British aircraft and special forces. Despite the dangers, the Argentines attacked relentlessly, flying at low level in a haze of small arms fire. In the following 5 days, HMS Ardent, Antelope and Coventry were all sunk, with 8 more ships damaged. But things might have been even worse. The Argentine aircraft were flying so low that many of their bombs didn't have a chance to arm and failed to explode. It was a pivotal moment. As the British Vice Chief of the Air Staff later remarked, 6 better fuses and we would have lost. Instead, the Battle of San Carlos was a victory for the British. Though they had taken losses, the Argentines had also suffered severe attrition of their aircraft, and Britain's land forces had made it safely ashore. The land battle for the Falklands was about to begin. The British objective was Stanley, the Falklands capital, but for most of the troops of 3 Commando Brigade, the journey there would be a slow slog. On the 25th of May, 2 more Exocets hit the British container ship Atlantic Conveyor. On board the conveyor were 5 Chinook heavy-lift helicopters. Only 1 survived the attack. Consequently, British logistics would be stretched to breaking point, and British troops would have to reach their objectives on foot. In the meantime, Britain's War Cabinet wanted a victory. They decided to divert 2 para to the south for an attack on the Argentine garrison at Darwin and Goose Green. The paras faced a difficult task. They were up against a numerically superior force with little fire support, and thanks to a report by the BBC, the Argentines knew they were coming. Both sides were also using the same weapons. This is an Argentine FNFAL used in the Falklands. A 7.62mm rifle, it's almost identical to the British SLR. The only major difference was that the Argentine version could put down fully automatic fire. As a result of these circumstances, the battle for Goose Green became a test of the soldiering ability of each side. The attack began in the early hours of the 28th of May, but progress was slow, and by daybreak, the British were bogged down in the gorse beneath the Argentine defences on Darwin Hill. The battalion commander, Colonel H. Jones, decided to lead from the front, but he was mortally wounded leading an uphill charge. The British were going nowhere. What helped to turn the tide were weapons like this L1A1 66mm rocket launcher, known in US service as the M72 Law. It's a disposable anti-tank weapon with a range of around 200 metres, but in the Falklands they were used to destroy Argentine machine gun positions at point-blank range. It was slow and difficult work, but by 1 PM the British had taken Boca House on the Argentine left and Darwin Hill. From there, they pressed the attack towards Goose Green, finally receiving assistance from British aircraft like this Harrier GR.3. These RAF aircraft were brought in to supplement expected losses amongst the Fleet Air Arm's Sea Harriers, but those losses were so few that they were mainly used for ground attack. By the evening, the Argentine garrison was surrounded, and the next morning they decided to surrender. Almost 1,000 Argentines became prisoners of war in what has become the most famous battle of the Falklands Conflict. It cost the lives of 18 British and 55 Argentine troops. With Goose Green secure, British attention turned once again towards Stanley, and when British reinforcements arrived from 5th Infantry Brigade on the 30th of May, the British were finally in a position to end the war. The final battle would be fought in the hills west of the capital, where the Argentines were dug in. Though most of their troops were conscripts, poorly led, trained and motivated, there was a corps of professional soldiers. Their positions were well prepared with mines, machine guns and mortars. Because of this, the British decided to attack at night. During preparations, Britain's helicopters came to the fore. Sea Kings and Wessexes had already played a key role in the sea battle, but now with only 1 Chinook available, these aircraft worked ceaselessly bringing troops and war materiel to the front line. It was a dangerous job. Around 1 in 7 of the British servicemen killed in the Falklands died in helicopter operations, including Richard Nunn, who was posthumously awarded the DFC after his Gazelle was shot down evacuating a wounded soldier. By the 11th of June, the build-up was complete and the final battles for the Falklands could take place. One of the key weapons in the battle was British 105mm artillery. These lightweight guns could be slung underneath a helicopter and could fire at ranges up to 17 kilometres. Learning the lessons of Goose Green, the attacking troops received heavy supporting fire from these guns and from ships at sea. They not only destroyed Argentine positions, they shattered morale. On Mount Harrier, 4-2 Commando flanked the Argentines, attacking through the back door. They took around 300 prisoners, many of them broken by British shells. There was similar success on Two Sisters. Though 4-5 Commando was initially pinned down, they eventually forced the Argentines to withdraw in the early hours of the morning. However, the battle for Mount Longdon became Britain's costliest battle of the conflict. 3 Para approached silently, but when a British soldier triggered an Argentine mine, all hell broke loose. Momentum stalled and was only regained thanks to the bravery of Sergeant Ian Mackay, who was awarded a posthumous VC after charging an Argentine machine gun post. Calling in artillery within 100 metres of their own positions, the Paras set about clearing the feature. It was a long, cold and hard fight, but by morning Mount Longdon was in British hands. The battle would cost the lives of 23 British and 50 Argentine soldiers. With the outer ring of hills secure, the climax of the conflict arrived on the night of the 13th of June. 2 Para's attack on Wireless Ridge was supported by Scorpion and Scimitar light tanks of the Blues and Royals. In the marshy conditions of the Falklands, these lightweight armoured vehicles could operate far more effectively than large tanks. They provided overwhelming firepower to the Paras as they captured their objectives and fought off several Argentine counterattacks. Meanwhile, the Scots Guards attacked the dominating heights of Mount Tumbledown. Up against the best Argentine troops on the islands, they were in for a tough fight. G Company took the first ridge unopposed, but Left Flank Company under Major John Keasley was stopped by heavy Argentine fire. As they slowly winkled out the Argentines in the crags, it was an artillery barrage which once again broke the deadlock. Seizing their moment, Keasley and his men charged up the hill and captured it at bayonet point. The battle was bloody. 10 British servicemen were killed and over 40 wounded. 30 Argentine soldiers died. As morning arrived, the British could see Argentine troops fleeing into Stanley, and that evening, the Argentine garrison surrendered. After 74 days, the Falkland Islands were back in British hands. These weapons from IWM's archives, stores and galleries shaped the course of the Falklands conflict, but they also altered and in many cases ended human lives. 907 people were killed during the Falklands conflict. 649 Argentines, 255 British personnel and 3 Falkland Islanders. Through our collections, IWM keeps their stories alive.